In this video, we're going to be creating a custom Mandalorian figure to look just like one of the really cool Mandalorian survivor characters from Mando Season 3, and we're going to be using all really easily obtainable materials so you can make this thing at home yourself. And plus, of course, we're going to be doing some toy photography as well. So recently in The Mandalorian Season 3, we've seen these really cool post-apocalyptic looking Mandalorian survivors. And they have such a cool battle-damaged look to them that just screams action figure. And I really like the look of the middle leader guy here. His armor looks great, so it's decided. I'm going to make a custom of this guy. Okay, so to create this custom, I'm going to be using this Black Series, the Death Watch Mandalorian figure, which is perfect. Great figure. Gonna be doing a lot of painting and adding some cloth to do some capes. I've got a bunch of cheap acrylic paints here. You can find these at Walmart. You can find them at any craft store, Michaels. I'll have all of this linked in the description as well. I have a bunch of great fabric here. My wife is a fantastic seamstress, perfect costume maker. She gave me a bunch of really great fabrics. So these are probably also at Walmart. They have a lot of fabric there too. Or at Joann's Fabrics or another craft store, you can find stuff like this. And this is basically just a bunch of scraps. And it's all very earth tone colors that I've got here because he's pretty earth toned looking. He's got a few little bits of red, a couple little bits of yellow, but for the most part, it's a bunch of grays and browns and a little bit of blues. First, I'm gonna start with actually painting the figure. And then we'll work on making a cape. I'm gonna do a wired cape. It's gonna be great. So first, let's get started on actually painting this guy. So the first thing I'm gonna do actually with him is take off this belt. I really like the belt and it looks good, but he doesn't really have something similar to this. I think I'll make my own belt as well. So I'm just gonna cut this off. I'm gonna save it for who knows whatever other time, but yeah, gonna take that off. So up top, his armor is actually, along his gauntlets here, are blue still. So I'm gonna leave those, which is convenient. I'll weather them later on. But the armor and his chest piece and his shoulder pads are kind of just brown. So I'm gonna start with just painting that a nice grayish brown. It's probably gonna take one or two coats to get this brown fully on there, because the blue is gonna shine through a little bit, but that's okay. And also one of the great things about these guys being like post-apocalyptic looking is that it doesn't need to be perfect. It just can look sloppy because that's like the whole point of their entire getup. Okay, so the brown is pretty much done on here for now. And I actually went ahead and did his thigh pads too because those are also brown. And there's also one thing I forgot about that I really wanted to do was on his armor, he's got some big cuts on his helmet and on his chest. And I wanted to do those cuts before I painted, but I totally forgot. So I'm gonna go and make a couple big cuts with my X-Acto knife on the side of his armor here. It might chip off some of the paint, but that's okay. I'll repaint it, and then later on, when I'm all done with the paint, I'll add some highlights with some of this silver stuff right here is amazing. It'll add some really great highlights with making this all look metal, making the Beskar look metal even though it's brown. And then also it'll highlight the scratches in it too, so I'll do that later on. But first, I gotta make those cuts with my X-Acto knife in the plastic. Okay, so the next color left for his armor is some yellow. So he's got some kind of yellow hand armor thingies, and his knee pads are also yellow, but they're very, muted brownish kind of yellow. They're not very bright. So all I have right now is this like neon yellow. So I'm gonna mix it with some browns and stuff to make a better yellow. And his knee pads are also a little bit different than this, which will actually help me with the paint. So I'm gonna cut the knee pads off and just leave the little front pads, paint those, and then glue them into place. So then that way, I won't have to worry about trying to paint underneath and around them and all that kind of thing. So I'm just gonna cut them off, paint them yellow, and then eventually I'll glue them right into place, so then they're all set. Okay, so while the knee pads are drying, I'm gonna be extra careful and paint his hands. And if there's anything that I accidentally go over and like get a little bit of yellow onto the black onto his gloves, then I can just take a little toothpick and rub that off. So now the jetpack is, you only really see it in like one part of the episode, but it's pretty much just like really torn up brown. There's a little bit of silver in there, but I'm just gonna paint this up to look very brownish, grayish, and then leave a little bit of that silver in there too, and then I'll weather it again later on. This will be nice and easy. Well, that's pretty much good for the jetpack. It honestly, it doesn't look that cool, but it also doesn't look that, the way it's painted in the show also doesn't really look that cool, so it'll work. And I'm gonna go through and do some basic weathering on all of this anyway, so this will look better later on. So the next thing I'm gonna do with the body is some of the undersuit, the flight suit. It's already pretty much gray, which is fine. Underneath he's got some grays and browns, but I'm gonna go over with just some other grays, some darker browns, and very lightly just to give it kind of like a little bit of a wash. Just give it a little bit more texture, because right now it's pretty bland. And it's also a little bit blue. It's also slightly blue in there, which I don't like. So I'm gonna get rid of that. So just gonna go through with some browns, grays, maybe a little bit of black, and that'll do it. Okay, the next part is the helmet. The helmet is gonna be obviously very important. And he's kind of got a pretty similar to Jango Fett type of helmet. He's pretty much all gray, and he's got some blue outlines around the T-visor. So I'm gonna try and paint just about everything gray. Just try to keep pretty much everything around the T-visor as is, including the blue outline and of course the black. But I also am gonna give him a nice scratch right over the face, just like he has in the movie, which I think will be really cool. So first I'm gonna cut that with the X-Acto knife and then paint it. I'm gonna do it ahead of time, this time, like I didn't do last time. Okay, so the helmet scratch is done. Actually, that looks really cool. So I'm gonna start painting this guy now. Okay, helmet's pretty much done. Body's pretty much done as far as paint goes. Still, we'll do a little bit of highlights later on as the last thing. Okay, the knee pads are on now. I just used some really basic, just super glue. That's drying, they look good. Okay, so the last thing left to do is the final details of the paint, which includes the rub and buff, some of this awesome silvery chrome looking paint stuff, which I'm gonna put in the scratches, and then also around some of the edges just to make it look like old weathered metal, you know? So that's gonna be cool. I love using this rub and buff stuff. A little bit of this goes a really, really long way. So just definitely make sure to be super careful with it. Just be super, super light and careful with where you need it. So let's do it. Okay, so the body and jetpack are done as far as the paint goes. Looking really good. That rub and buff does such a big difference. It looks so good. So now I'm gonna move on to the helmet. Gonna be very careful, but man, it's gonna look good. It's gonna look real good. Once this dries, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to spray this with this matte spray outside. It's just gonna give it a nice coat, make it a really nice matte feel. All the paint and everything's gonna be locked in. And that will be really the final touch with all of the paint. And so, gonna wait for this to dry, then I'm gonna do that. Wow, he is looking amazing. Without even having any capes or anything, he looks really good. Really happy with him so far. Okay, so as far as paint goes, he's all done, he's all set. Just as is, he looks so good. He looks really cool. I'm really happy with him. So I think I'm gonna do the cape last, because he does have a big cape, and I have something kind of cut out for that, but I'm gonna do that last. First, I'm gonna give him a belt. He's got like a thick belt around his waist. I'm gonna use this leather strip that I have here. I think will look really good. He's got some, like a red underneath kind of flap over one side. I'm gonna do that actually first, and then the belt will go over that. Yes. Okay, so I'm just gonna put some super glue around his waist, like this, and wrap it around, and that should hold well on the waist, just like that. So I've got this little piece of leather here that I'm just gonna wrap around underneath there, and glue that just like that, and that'll be good. I'm gonna take some pieces of his old belt, like the buckle there, the front part, and then also the gun holster, because he does have a gun holster on the side, and I'm gonna glue those on too. Something that will be really fun to do is get some watered down paint and then just kind of put it on like the red cloak here, just like that, to give it a little more weathering. So I feel like it could really stand out with too much red like that, so I think this will really just kind of help weather it. Alright, okay, so I made this cape and I really bootlegged the crap out of it. So I cut up this really cool piece of fabric that already has cool texture on it, and I just cut it up, tore it, ripped it, tried to make it all frayed like before, like this, which worked nicely, cut some holes in it, and then I actually stapled on a couple little pieces here for more flaps to make it look cool. So yeah, staples worked, and then I took a lighter and I kind of burnt the edges and made it a little more weathered, and it looks pretty good, and hopefully it will fit him. Actually, it's a little bit long. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit long, but the goal is to kind of wrap it around his shoulders like this, because that's how it kind of looks. Like it's like underneath his armpits. That's kind of how he's got it in the show, kind of like that. So I'm gonna do that and glue it in that way. But first I gotta cut it up a little bit and make it fit a little bit better. So the cape is on him, but as you can see underneath, you can see some of the wires there. So what I'm gonna do, I actually ended up using the wire and weaving it through some of the staples I put on the back of the cape, which, wow, just worked so well. And then underneath, I kind of just put the wire underneath some of the back part of the plastic there, and it worked pretty well. It's the most bootleg possible cape, but it's looking actually quite nice. And then I just super glued it basically under his armpits, and that's it. Very nice. So I'm gonna finish up the cape with maybe adding a little bit more weathering to it. It's a little bit too clean, and then kind of covering up those wires back there, and he'll be just about done. And if you want any more information on creating a custom cape just like this, I have a whole tutorial on how to make a custom cape. I'll have that linked right here in the description and in the cards as well. Okay, well, here he is. He is complete. I'm gonna go ahead and say he does not look how he does in the show, but he looks really cool. Definitely a little different. He's definitely a lot more exaggerated and more vibrant than how he looks in the show, but I think he looks really great. The cape ended up coming out quite nice. It is wired, so you can move it around a little bit. You can't move it around a whole lot, but you can. The jetpack does actually get in the way. What I ended up doing was poking a hole through the cape and putting the jetpack back in, and I actually just glued it back in just so it stays in, because I thought that'd be a problem. And I put that little strap he's got on his chest. This is actually the leftover piece of his belt. Put that back in there. So I think the next thing I'm gonna do with him is I'm gonna take him to my favorite spot and take a shot of him just to finalize the video. And yeah, I will also say too that his arm articulation is still there despite the cape there, so that's cool. Okay, let's go take a picture of him. Okay, so here we are in my favorite place. I've got myself set up over here, and let me show you what I got going on. We have our Mando survivor over here just chilling in a cool hero pose. Nothing crazy, just because I'm really just trying to showcase the figure here. And I've got a bunch of other Mando helmets over here. I got Mando, Paz, the Mando Loyalist, Boba Fett, Bo-Katan. And I've just kind of stuck some sticks in the ground because I think it looks kind of cool. Got this cool root thing behind. And basically what I'm gonna do is just kick up a bunch of sand like this to create some cool atmosphere. And I'm also gonna use my light reflector here to kind of bounce some light to get some cool lighting going on with this guy. It's kind of in the middle of the day right now. The sun's right up in the sky. I would have preferred to do this later on at the day, but it's supposed to rain later. So that's why we're doing it like this, but oh no, it's blowing away. But I think we're pretty much good to take the photo. Still got some cool shadows going on, so let's go and take the shot. I had an absolute blast creating this figure, and I'm actually really happy with how it came out. So if you do want to make something similar to this, I do have all of the materials listed in the description of the video, including the action figure too. And if you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing. I have a ton of customization and of course toy photography videos on the channel already. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.